The Last Passenger. She boarded the train, the last one of the night. The platform was deserted and the station was eerily silent. As the train started moving, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The train felt different, older, and more decrepit than usual. The lights flickered, and she thought she heard strange noises coming from the shadows. She tried to ignore it, thinking it was just her imagination, but the feeling of unease grew stronger. As the train chugged on, she noticed that the stations they passed were abandoned and overgrown with weeds. She couldn't remember ever seeing these stations before and thought it must be a new route. But as she looked out the window, she saw that the passing scenery was not the familiar cityscape she knew but an eerie, twisted version of it. The buildings were dilapidated and abandoned, and the streets were empty, except for strange creatures lurking in the shadows. She tried to get off at the next stop, but the doors wouldn't open. She banged on the windows, but no one came to her aid. She was trapped on the train, with no way to escape. As the train continued on, she heard strange whispering coming from the shadows. She thought she saw ghostly figures standing in the corners of the car, but when she turned to look, they were gone. As the train reached the end of the line, she saw that the station was not a station at all, but a dark, twisted version of it. The platform was overgrown with weeds and the waiting room was abandoned and boarded up. The train came to a stop and the doors opened. She stepped off the train, but as she did, she felt a chill run down her spine. She realized that she was not alone. She turned around to see ghostly figures standing on the platform, all dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They reached out to her, beckoning her to join them. She realized that they were the spirits of the last passengers of the train, who had died in a tragic accident many years ago. They were trapped on the train, forced to relive their final journey over and over again. But as she looked closer, she saw that these spirits were not just trapped but tortured, their bodies twisted and their eyes filled with fear and pain. They were not reaching out to her to join them but to warn her of something far more sinister. She tried to run, but the spirits were closing in on her. She realized that she was now a part of their eternal journey, trapped on the train for all eternity. As she was dragged back onto the train, she saw something even more terrifying. The spirits were not the only ones trapped on the train. There was a figure standing at the end of the car. It was a dark and twisted figure, with eyes that seemed to glow with an otherworldly power. She knew that this figure was not just a ghost, but something far more sinister. She realized that the figure was the demon that controlled the train. It had been collecting the souls of the last passengers of the train every night, using them to fuel its power. The demon had been using the spirits of the last passengers to lure in new victims, trapping them on the train for all eternity. She knew that she had to find a way to break the curse and put an end to the demon's reign before it's too late. She searched the train for clues, and eventually, she found an ancient book of magic hidden in one of the compartments. The book contained the ritual to banish the demon and break the curse. With the help of the spirits, she performed the ritual and the demon was finally defeated. The spirits were finally able to find peace and the train came to a stop. She stepped off the train, and she found herself back at the station she had boarded from. The platform was no longer deserted, and the station was alive with people. She had broken the curse, and the demon's reign was finally over. But as she walked away from the train, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. She looked back and saw that the train was no longer old and decrepit, but new and shiny. But as the train started moving, she thought she saw ghostly figures standing in the windows, and she knew that the train would always be haunted, and the spirits of the last passengers would continue to lure in new victims. She decided to walk home, knowing that she would never take the train again. She had narrowly escaped being trapped on the train for all eternity, but she would never forget the terror she had experienced on the last passenger.